David Johnson will bounce back in 2019 fantasy football. Big part of it is because my rushing expectation running back methodology is telling me that it is very similar to 2016 Todd Gurley. Start now by subscribing to the channel, and make sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss anything along the way. If you found me on Instagram, now's the time to smash that like button and we'll get started. It's well documented at this point how tough a season it was for David Johnson and the Arizona Cardinals in 2018. A big part of it could have been coaching and the scheme involved, but also the offensive line really struggled last year. 25th in adjusted line yards per Football Outsiders. Got me thinking when looking at his rushing expectation sample that it just reminded me of another really strong back. 2 years ago, Todd Gurley, the 2016 season, really struggled. Jeff Fisher obviously was the coach there before Sean McVay, and things really turned around for the Rams. So I had a lot of similarities that I wanted to go through, and it actually ended up being a lot closer than I even thought. So excited to dive into this study with you guys and kind of compare the two, but let's start with David Johnson last year. Mentioned it before, but a big problem with Arizona last year was just a lack of creativity. Steve Wilks, the head coach, is out. They will be bringing in head coach Cliff Kingsbury, who will be definitely doing things a little bit differently, going to be picking up the pace, and I would assume that's going to be a lot more creative. So someone like David Johnson, who's just a mismatch in space, I would be shocked if they did the same thing they did last year, where they basically just ran him right into the line of scrimmage as much as possible, right up the gut. 72.5% of DJ's rush attempts came right through the middle last year. So that's not a lot of creativity. I think they're going to do a better job of putting him in a position to excel. Through the air, DJ is seeing such a large percentage of his receptions behind the line of scrimmage is likely due to how poor the offensive line was, but it's also yet another failure to just be more creative by moving DJ around. He's obviously a wide receiver in so many different ways. He's so dynamic with the ball in his hands. I think we can move on to chart number 2 now, but I definitely want to hammer that home. So when I say you can use David Johnson as a wide receiver, I wasn't kidding. He was actually rated by PFF, Pro Football Focus, as the #1 receiving player in 2017. That includes wide receivers, and he saw just 13.2% of his targets, 5 or more air yards down the field. When he did see those targets, he crushed. 96th percentile was his top expectation score by far. Another scheme issue, in my opinion. Guys like Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara see north of 20% of their targets in this area deeper down the field. I definitely expect DJ to get there in 2019 with this new system. The rest is pretty ugly on this chart, guys. Remember, 72.5% of his carries came right up the middle. So that's where his large sample is, and DJ came in with a 13th percentile expectation score through that lane with just an absolute nut low 44.2 expected success rate. Couldn't even hit that. So I think that the only way we can kind of make sense of this is by digging a little bit deeper into some of his advanced stats. Yikes, 7th percentile overall on the ground. His rookie season through the middle, he provided a 79th percentile score right up the gut. So that kind of drop off doesn't feel organic to me. Anyways, outside of these normal numbers, one thing that stood out to me right away is that I remember a similar chart 2 years ago, and we'll touch on that in a minute. We know it's Todd Gurley, but before we get there, some of my metrics are not adjusted for offensive line. I only use expectation score for stats that directly correlate over the past 20 years to the data that I have. So average time behind the line of scrimmage and big play rate metrics, they're not adjusted for offensive line play. DJ falls right on his face here, and that's because he's not getting that bump for how poor his offensive line was like we see in some of these other stats. So if we look at stuff like stuff rate, second level yards per attempt, air yards per target, these in-depth metrics that are adjusted for line quality, there's just massive signs of life here, honestly, as DJ as a talent. So I did kind of a double take when I saw this because, as Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers touched on their podcast a few weeks back, this is something I noticed with Todd Gurley in 2016. Definitely cue all the Jeff Fisher narratives and all those gifs on Twitter now, but actually it's bizarre how similar they are. You can actually argue that David Johnson performed even better in some of the advanced metrics and a comparably awful situation as Gurley had in LA at the time, pre-Sean McVay. By the way, guys, if you've ever found value in any of my videos or live streams, one of the best ways to support what I'm doing here for free is to throw me the follow over on Twitter. And if you're new to the community, I also do a ton of content exclusive only to Instagram. So just take a few seconds and follow me over there. Really appreciate it. I said a lot of things going into the 2017 season about Todd Gurley and how poor his 2016 season was, but I definitely acknowledge now that I have a little bit more kind of sample size behind rushing expectation, that there were definitely some clues to believe that the worst was behind him after that season. And I believe a lot of this same analysis is going to apply to David Johnson today. Full transparency, guys, this is going to come straight from my write-up on Gurley 2016's rushing expectation. In charting Gurley, I saw a running back who has all the physical tools of an elite feature back. That said, his season in 2016 was one of the worst I've ever seen in my entire rushing expectation sample. He struggled with efficiency as well as other key metrics like success rate versus 7 or fewer defenders in the box, and Gurley's struggles started up front. The Rams had an expected success rate of only 42.7%, the fourth lowest in the league, well below the NFL average. There's more. Gurley struggled to create yards before contact. That's one of those metrics that I intuitively believe can be a reflection of one of two things, either the running back's ability or his offensive line in front of him to varying degrees. So the running backs that kind of pique my interest the most are the ones that post strong yards before contact numbers despite below average blocking in front of them. And now I believe that Gurley's poor yards before contact are largely more of an indictment on that offensive line in this case. It's still disappointing that a back of his supposed caliber wasn't able to perform better in this metric. So there's a few things that I definitely was a little bit scared about in 2016 with Todd Gurley, and definitely his failure to overcome such a low expectation is magnified just by the fact that he actually didn't even see loaded boxes that often as well. But it is possible that Gurley felt pressure to make plays on every touch, since there was really not a lot of other playmakers around him in that Rams offense that season, really similar to what we saw from David Johnson last year. There just wasn't a lot else on offense that was working, and defenses could really sell out to stop DJ. Circling back to Gurley, it was probably due to any combination of that offensive line, quarterback play, scheme. It could have been a million different things, but there's so many similarities between that situation then and DJ's situation now and going forward. The difference that was working in Gurley's favor is that his offensive line looked like they added some pieces that had nowhere to go but up. Sean McVay as their new coach. Gurley went on to rush for over 2,000 total yards in 2017 with 19 total touchdowns. So dead wrong there, but I won't argue that the signs this year with David Johnson are so incredibly similar across the board. The hiring of head coach Cliff Kingsbury will undoubtedly lead to the Cardinals being one of the fastest paces offense in the league, and that selection of Kyler Murray is absolutely huge. Running quarterbacks can do a ton to open things up in the run game. Definitely a wrinkle that this offense hasn't had since DJ entered the league. David Johnson will bounce back in 2019 fantasy football, and he is worth your mid-range first-round pick. I won't make that same mistake twice. If you want to learn more about rushing expectation 2019 so you can dominate your fantasy football draft, start now by hitting the subscribe icon in the bottom right-hand corner so you don't miss anything. Have a ton of DFS courses on demand here as well, so be sure and check those out. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.